Hello and welcome to a somewhat meta Dojo video. Today I would like to talk to you guys about a program called OBS. It's Open Broadcasting Software. This is what I personally use to capture all of my classes if I'm doing live class recordings, as well as any game footage that I might need when I'm putting together other types of Dojo videos or just capturing things on my computer in general. I'm not going to profess to be an expert on OBS. I've only been using it for a little while, just when I started doing some video work for Dojo. There are probably about 1 million better tutorials about OBS in general on YouTube, so I encourage you to go and look those up if you need to. I just wanted to create a somewhat short one, hopefully short video within the context of Brave Dojo videos for our YouTube channel, and hopefully encourage people to submit their classes and other ideas for us to use. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So today I'm going to be referring to the OBS Studio software. I believe that there is another version called Streamlabs, but the OBS Studio is open source, free. All you have to do is Google, like I'm showing here on screen. Just Google it there, download it, and you should be good to go. And once you open it, it looks something like this. I believe by default, all these little tabs down here at the bottom left will be on the screen at once in little boxes, little sections. You can use these little pop-out buttons here at the top right of each little section and stack them up into one big tab like I have here. If you want, you don't have to. That's just how I prefer to do it. Let's go over some of the important features here. So on the controls section, it's pretty straightforward. You've got your start, stop, a couple other buttons, and then the settings button, which we will be reviewing shortly. And then the actual areas that you've got are the audio mixer, which shows all of your active sources and if they're detecting sound or not. You've got your actual list of sources, and this is where you manage your sources as well. And then the scene transition and scenes tabs are more geared towards streaming. I personally have not really dealt with streaming, and we're not going to really be talking about streaming today on this video, unfortunately. So I would recommend, if you're looking for streaming advice, to go search out one of those other tutorials out there on YouTube. There should be plenty of them. So when you first open OBS, like I said, you should have all of these little tabs in one area, but it should also probably prompt you for a couple of questions. It'll ask you how you intend to use OBS, either as a streaming platform or as a recording platform, or I think a third option, both, or maybe neither. Today, like I said, we're going to be geared more towards recording. I know I selected the recording option. It'll take a look at your system hardware, and it'll make a recommendation on what it thinks your settings should be. You can always go into the settings window and tweak those later if you need to, and we'll be going over some of those tweaks here in just a minute. But in order to use OBS at all, the first thing you need to do is tell it, what is it capturing? You need to think of it as a camera. You need to point it at something to start recording. So your sources window should be blank when you first start OBS, but in order to add sources, you just go to this little plus button at the bottom left. You'll click Add Source. And in order to capture video, you'll have to select one of the video capture options. I personally use display capture, which will capture an entire display. That means my primary monitor. Anything that is on my monitor will be recorded. Now bear in mind, if you use this option, that means that if you Alt-Tab or minimize or whatever, that will be recorded. So you would just click, give it a name, and then you would select which monitor you want. I've got two, but I only really want to record whatever's on my primary monitor. Some of your other options for the video, if you only want us to capture a particular window or just the game itself, like just Eve, you can use game capture or I believe window capture. These will allow you to select. So for instance, if I were to go to game capture and name it Eve, select OK, it will ask me a couple of things. It'll capture any full screen application. So if you have a game in full screen mode, it should pick up on that. But I would probably, if you're going to go this way, recommend using capture a specific window. And you want to have the game running, and you can select exe file for Eve, and then it'll show up, and you can see now it is only focusing on Eve, not my whole monitor. But I prefer not to use that method because sometimes I want to capture stuff like this that is not within the game, and it just makes it easier. I don't have to remember to switch sources and all that kind of stuff. So now you're capturing video. You want to go into your controls, make sure that the recommended settings are what you want them to be. It's under the output tab in recording. Yours is probably going to be simple by default. You really don't need to mess with too much in here. You just really need to specify where you want your footage to be saved. If you have a particular hard drive that's better for video footage than another, and whatever folder you want. And you'll also want to check the recording format. So MP4 is probably what most people are familiar with. And MP4 and what I'm going to recommend, MKV, are both what are called container formats, which means that they're not a true video file. They are a container which has multiple data streams within it. Another type of container you might be familiar with is a zip file or an archive file, where it's got a whole bunch of different stuff in there compressed. MP4 and MKV are much the same. The difference is that MP4 is problematic if your program or your computer happens to crash. There's a very good chance that you lose everything that you've done up to that point if you haven't hit stop and allowed the video to actually save to your hard drive. Whereas with MKV, just by its design, for some reason, will have a much better chance of that video recording being recovered once you start your computer or the program back up. I don't know why that is, technically speaking, but it is the safer format in the event that you have a crash. Another note about MKV format, a lot of devices and video players are not able to interpret MKV. MP4s are pretty much universal. Basically anything can play them, but MKV formats, I know VLC is able to play them, but a lot of other stuff just can't interpret the file type. So you may run into issues there if you need to play it back for some reason. And then the other thing I would recommend you take a look at here, make sure your resolution is right, first of all, but also your audio tracks. We're going to circle back to this here in a few minutes, but remember that your audio tracks here are also under output and recording. Okay, so speaking of audio, now we've got video recording, and we want to make sure that we are also heard. So you'll need to add audio sources just the same as you added a video source. So first and foremost, you're going to want to add your microphone. Mine is this Scarlett Solo here. That's the name of my audio interface. So you add an audio source much the same way that you added your video source. You just click the plus button, and for a microphone in particular, it's going to be your audio input capture option. I'm not going to click this because it will make my recording sound somewhat janky for a minute, and I prefer not to mess with that. But you would click this, you would name your audio source, and then there will be a drop-down box allowing you to select which input device that you currently have connected. Which of those would you like to use? So find whichever microphone you have connected, click that, and then you should be good to go. And you can verify this has worked if you go over to your audio mixer. You can see on the right-hand side that Scarlett Solo, which is my input device, is registering my voice as I'm talking. So you should be able to see this meter going up and down. So now we've got our microphone hooked up so everybody can hear our lovely voices. But there are also a lot of other sources of audio on a computer. For instance, you can hear right now in the background, I'm sure you can hear the Eve Citadel background noise because I'm sitting in a hangar. In order to record that type of sound, you need to add more sources. And the way that I prefer to do this is what's called the audio or the application audio capture. It says this is a beta feature, so I guess it's relatively new, but it works fantastically. I have had zero issues with it, and it's very convenient. So the way that this works is it just picks a particular program, and it says I'm only listening to this one program. So say I did not have Eve added as a source, remove it. So you probably just heard the sound drop out from the Eve background noise. But if I wanted to re-add that as a source, I just go into here. I'm going to name it Eve. I'm going to go into the drop down, and I am going to select exe file or Eve. The game does need to be running, I believe, in order for you to actually add it. So make sure it's running. And then you select OK. And so there's no jankiness. I'm quickly going to do this because it will sound weird otherwise. We'll go over what I just did here in a minute. And now you should be able to hear Eve again just like it was before. And that's all there is to it. Now you want to do that for any game that you want to record the sound of, obviously. But there are also other programs that you might want to record. In our particular context, most important is most likely Mumble. If you're running a live class and you're doing a recording of it, you want to record your students asking questions so that the people watching the video in the future know what's going on. You want to set up an audio input source for Mumble as well. So you want to launch Mumble, click your plus button, application audio capture, select it, name it, select the Mumble exe file from the dropdown, and then you're good to go. And you want to do that with basically every program that you're going to capture audio from. You only ever really have to do this once, as long as you don't delete them or anything. And you can do this with every game that you play and want to record in. You can do this with Mumble, Discord, as well as any browsers if you're going to be doing like video, like recording YouTube or whatever. You can do that as well. So now that you've got all your sources added, we need to go into the audio mixer and do a little tweaking. So what you can see on the screen now is my audio mixer. You can see all of my sources. The only two that are actually active right now are my microphone on the right and Eve here in the towards the left. So one thing you can do in this audio mixer interface is you can independently mute each audio source if you want, just by clicking this little speaker. So you probably heard Eve's audio drop out in the background right there. It's because I clicked the mute button. If I click it again, it'll bring the audio back. One thing to note is that if you do mute something through the system volume management, including your microphone, there will be issues because that will also kill the audio. So now I can no longer hear Eve in the background, and neither can you. As you can see, the meter has stopped registering any sound because I muted it at the system level. So just be aware that if you're muting stuff at the system level, you might be causing yourself some problems. One of the biggest convenience things that I wanted to stress with this video is to record audio into separate tracks. Now you'll if you recall when we were in the settings menu, I mentioned the audio track boxes here. These boxes will determine how many audio tracks you are recording when you hit the record button. So currently I've got 5 selected. So that means that I am recording 5 separate audio tracks. Now what does that mean? Well, if we come back to our audio mixer and we click on this little gear button, you'll see a box pop up with all of my audio sources and a bunch of different settings for each one. So if you need to give an audio source a boost during recording, like I have boosted my microphone just a bit, you can do that here. You can also mute ones. This mic aux does not go away for some reason, so I have it at negative infinity just to mute it. You can also change balance and set mono. I tend to set microphone as mono sources because I do that in video editing anyway, and there's really no reason to record in stereo for a microphone in my case. Sync offset, I'm not sure what it does. I think it has to do with latency. I can't recommend one way or the other. And audio monitoring is if for some reason you need to have monitoring, like when you're talking into a microphone, you need to hear yourself. I believe you can do that here. My audio interface does that for me automatically, so I do not need to use that. But the thing we're most concerned with here are the tracks on the right. So you recall that I am recording 5 tracks. What these checkboxes do is allow me to say this audio source is going to be recorded to this particular track. So the way that I have this set up right now is that game audio, for whatever game I happen to be playing, this kind of operates on the assumption that I'm only playing one game at a time. Otherwise, it might get messy. But game audio is always captured into track 1 and track 1 only. So you'll notice that Deep Rock, Eve, Hunt Showdown, and Red Dead Redemption all are only in track 1. No, none of the other boxes on those lines are checked. My microphone is always recorded into track 2 and only track 2. So you see the Scarlet Solo here. Discord, if I'm on a call with some buddies or I'm on one of the Brave servers for a strat op or whatever, always gets recorded into track 3 and only track 3. And likewise for mumble, it only gets recorded into track 4. Then track 5 is for my browser, Firefox, if I have music playing or video or something that for some reason I want in my recording. It's there. I would highly encourage you to set this up this way. You don't have to do it exactly like this, but to say that each audio type, like game audio, microphone audio, mumble audio, Discord audio, browser audio, they all get their own track. And I'll show you the reason why in just a moment in a video editor. Here's why I wanted to stress recording different audio sources into different audio tracks. If you take a look here in this video editing software I've got, on the left, here's a clip from Eve. When I first started messing with this stuff and I didn't realize you could set it up this way, I recorded everything into one single audio track. So that means that any audio on my computer, as well as my microphone, were all squished into one audio track. So that means my microphone, Eve, game sound, mumble, Discord, browser, whatever. Everything is squished all into one audio track. And why is that a bad thing? It's not always necessarily, but now they are forever squished together into one single audio file. So any change that I make to perhaps boost one person's voice will also affect any other noise that's happening at that time equally. I can now no longer separate things and work on them independently once it's recorded in this way. On the right, as a counterexample, is much later. I was playing a game of Hunt. I captured a highlight, but I had it set up properly with 6 audio tracks. And you notice that each waveform is different, and that is because I set it up the way that I showed you before. So game audio is in this top track 1. My voice is in track 2, and my buddy's voice on Discord is in track 3. Now these bottom 3 tracks I really don't need, and the great thing about doing it this way is I can unlink the clips, I can select those bottom 3, and I can get rid of them because I don't need them. Then I can link the clips back together if I want to move things around or whatever. The great thing is that if I need to make an adjustment on one of these tracks when it comes to the audio editing side of things, I can select just that track. So if I need to change the game audio only, I can select track 1 and do whatever I need to do without affecting the other ones. And that's the key point here. You can work on things independently, and that is a huge convenience and quality boost for anybody that's involved in the editing process, as well as the quality boost coming in at the final product. So I'd highly encourage you guys just to take a few minutes and set up your audio tracks this way. You only have to do it once, and then anytime you add a new audio source, you'll have to make sure that it's set up right. But other than that, it's extremely low maintenance. So one final note about the multiple audio tracks. When you record them in that way, the only downside that you may have is if you wanted to immediately play that file back, you're going to have an issue playing all of the audio. I typically use VLC, which is one of the better video players, but no matter which video player I use, I can only ever listen to one audio track at a time when I play back a raw MKV or even MP4 file with multiple audio tracks. So the only downside to recording audio in this way is that if you want all of the audio to be present all at once when you're viewing the video, you will have to send it through video processing software like a video editor. You'll have to render it into a true video format in order to get all of those audio tracks to play all at the same time. This is just an issue with video players. I guess they can't parse multiple audio tracks at the same time. I'm not sure why that's the case, but that's the only issue that I've run into with this method. So now you've got your video capture set up, you've got your audio capture set up, you've got your audio mixer set up, and you've checked your settings, and they're all good. You're ready to hit record and make your video. That's pretty much all there is to this. So one more thing I wanted to note with OBS is the feature called Replay Buffer. So if you're making a video where you need to capture a bunch of clips of different things at different times, and you don't want to be recording all the time and filling up your hard drives, this is the feature for you. If you're familiar with something like NVIDIA Shadow Play, it's very similar. So all it does is you enable this feature, you hit the start button, and it'll start recording for a predetermined amount of time that you set, say 1 minute, 2 minutes, whatever. And then you hit the trigger button, and it will capture the last whatever duration you set. So say you set it for 2 minutes, you hit the trigger button, it'll capture the last 2 minutes of whatever happened on your screen. And that's a great way that if you're looking for a particular type of clip, but you don't know when it's going to happen and you don't want to be recording all the time, that's the way to do it. So now replay buffer is not enabled by default. You'll have to go into settings, the output and recording. I believe if you have output mode to simple, there will be a checkbox towards the bottom that allows you to enable it. Or if you flip this over to advanced to mess with some other settings, the replay buffer tab will appear, and you can click the checkbox here and define the length of your clips here. And that's all there is to it. Once you do that, you hit apply, this button will appear, and you can use that as you please. You'll also want to make sure that you go to the hotkey settings and set your trigger key. Just a couple of final notes on problems that you may encounter while recording stuff. If you're watching back a recording that you made and the frame rate is very choppy or much lower than it should be, try re-recording when you are running OBS as administrator. You right-click the program at launch and you hit run as administrator. I have zero clue why, but that seems to have resolved any issues I've had with that particular problem. The other is concerning if your video looks very blocky, very compressed. Like if you're watching a YouTube video with lots of stuff on the screen and it's really poorly compressed and looks chunky, blocky, that kind of thing, that is going to be an issue with your bit rate. It's going to be different for everybody. It's very dependent on your system and your specs, all that kind of stuff. Definitely do a little bit of research. I run mine at 10,000 kbps. It's kind of a balancing act between quality and how many resources you have available on your system. But if you do notice that you are having very poor quality, like blockiness, you're going to have to bump up the bit rate in order to fix that. And that's basically all there is to OBS, at least in this capacity for just simple screen recording. That's all there is. It's relatively simple. Like I said, I'm no expert on this stuff, but I hope you were able to learn something today and hopefully come away encouraged to give video recording a try. We're always looking for new content for our YouTube channel, always looking for recordings of live classes especially. Those are great. We love to have those. So thank you for watching and fly safe.